Creating the edge border to a tile floor is quite an art. With a few tips though, it can be done quickly and accurately, giving the floor a professional finish. There are two main tools used for this process: the hand-operated tile cutter and the wet saw, which uses a circular saw with a special tile blade to make the cuts. I use both on the same job to speed up the process and to make tile cutting more comfortable, which I'll explain as we move along. The first phase is to measure the gaps that need to be filled. This can be done in two ways. The classic method gives a very accurate result. Take a full tile and place it on top of the last set tile on the floor, and place a half a tile against the wall. This is a spacer to create the gap between the tiles. Place a marker tile on top and rest it against the spacer tile. Now draw a line on the bottom tile using the edge of a marker tile as your guide. The uncovered section of the tile will fit perfectly into the gap that we want to fill. Using the hand cutter, score the tile over your line and snap it in two. The cutter has a little wheel which scores the glaze of the tile, and when you put pressure on the two sections, they'll part cleanly and in a straight line. Make sure that you press down on the end of the tile though. If you apply the pressing T to the middle of the tile, it won't make the cut or may shatter the tile. By moving the press bar to the top of the cutter, tile cracks nice and neatly. So let's check the fit of my cut tile. That's pretty good. I'm quite happy. The other method of working is to measure the gap between the wall and the tiles using a tape measure. Fortunately, the wall is straight and the gaps are all the same in this case. So, taking a spare tile, I write down the measurement and make a note that I need 16 tiles for the one side. Moving to the other side, I'll measure again and find that the measurement is the same. By doing the same on the two opposite walls, I establish the number of tiles that I'll need. Now the cuts are all straight, and so I'm going to use the hand cutter for the job. It's very quick and doesn't make any noise. At the top of the instrument are ruler markings and an adjustable edge fence, which is very useful for cutting a number of tiles of the same size. My first cut is 3 1/4 inches wide, so I place the edge of the tile 3 1/4 inches from the cutting wheel, score it along its length and snap it off. A quick measurement tells me that my cut is good, and so on with the next one. Because we don't like to waste tiles, I'll use the other side of the tile for this piece. The easiest way to insert the tile edges is to place a few dabs of adhesive onto the back of the tile, being careful to keep the adhesive away from the edges. This process is known as buttering. I find that buttering a line of tiles while standing upright at the table saves my knees and back, and as I insert them into position, a slight twist will help to seat them correctly. The gap is determined by inserting plastic spacers. The tile that we're using is made from clay that's pressed into shape and fired in a kiln to give it strength. It's known as ceramic tile. This design costs about $1.50 per tile and comes from the Home Depot. Ordinary tiles range in price from $1 to about $5 each, with specialty tiles going up in price from there. Well, so far the job's gone well. It's taken about an hour and a half to lay my edge pieces, and that includes those inside the closet, which I'm tiling as well. There are 3 basic ways to make specialty cuts around the edges of doors and the corners. To mark the shape of the edge for the corner of the room onto a tile, I'll use the classic method, laying my tile squarely over the last set tile and using another full tile to transfer my markings. I'm not using the half tile as a spacer, as I want the tile to fit snugly against the wall, and I'm leaving a 1/4 inch space for the gap between the tiles. In this case, the door frame has a gap between it and the floor, and I can slip the tile under the frame to create a good looking finish. A second method, which is simple but very effective, is to mark the tile in position on the floor, transferring the edge and corner positions directly to the tile. Use the straight edge of another tile or a ruler to transfer the shape of the edge onto the tile. The third method is to take a piece of paper and cut it a tile length on one side. Placing it where the tile will lie, I'll trace the shape of the door trim onto the paper, cutting out the pieces to be removed as I progress. Once I'm satisfied with the fit, I'll lay the paper onto a tile and trace out the shape using a pencil. This is more time consuming though, so why not use the easy methods when you can. After marking all of my complex shapes, I'm ready to cut them out. This is where the wet saw comes in very handy. A wet saw is a circular saw mounted into a table. A tray at the bottom holds water, which the blade passes through as it spins. This virtually eliminates dust and cools the blade. It makes very accurate and neat cuts, but takes a lot longer to set up and is noisy, so you'll generally need to wear ear protection. Blades need to be replaced when blunt, so there's also extra expense involved. Although the wet saw only makes straight cuts, it's very effective to create insets. To do this, make the straight cuts on each side first, and then make a cut from one side to the end of the last cut to remove the excess piece. Make a series of short cuts to the line about a half an inch away from each other. Now we'll check out a new tool, the nippers, a sort of a cross between pliers and wire cutters. Supporting the back of the tile, I'll clip or knock out the unwanted lengths. The edge is quite rough, so I'll use the nippers to smooth it off. To get a really smooth finish, run over the edge with a file. Once you've made all the cuts and are happy with the fit, butter the bottom of each tile and fit it into position. The wet saw does a great job cutting specialty tiles, but for straight cuts the hand cutter is quicker, quieter, cheaper, and easier to handle and set up. So use the two in tandem to make the job easier and to get great results. Our next tiling segment covers grouting, a very interesting but very tiring part of tiling. So have a quick break, put your feet up, build up your energy, and have a look at this fascinating process.